I've already logged in, so I end up here at my entry point for App Builder. App Builder ships with a bunch of preset, sort of pre-made, rich sample applications that are not only good starters, but they help you to learn the product. Also, if I click the new application button, I'm presented with some different preset templates that I can start with. We looked at a bunch of different types of UIs that are most common for the web, and this is what we came up with, so it gives you a way to really get going quickly. Also, you can simply import your designs from Figma or Sketch or use our plugins for both of those products. But let's go ahead and use one of the starter apps. You can pick any one of these. I like to usually start with the team collaboration sample because it highlights some nice features of the product and is also very visually impressive. So first off, I've opened up this sample application. I'm presented with App Builder. This is a SaaS-based product, as we talked about in the intro, and it really does give you this WYSIWYG to deliver a full experience from design to code for application developers. I have some options here for quick tips, videos, docs, etc. But let's just go through what the layout is here for App Builder so you can get started. The first thing you'll see on the left are all of my screens. So as I select these guys, you can see on the right-hand side, the canvas changes to show what's available to me. So you'll see here I have a bunch of preset screens that are already made up. When I select one of the components on a screen, you'll notice that the right-hand side changes based on the type of component I'm selecting. And also on the left, you'll see that the object model, or the DOM, the document object model for this layout, is displayed. This gives you a easy way to maybe rearrange objects, rename, hide, show, etc. if you want to work within that document object or document outline, or you just work directly with components as you select them, and you can change properties on the right. Properties range from how things are sized, spaced, what the layout is, if you're doing data binding, then configuration per component. So for example, on a calendar, you might have configurations like what are we binding data to, what's the start date, how many months, etc. So there's obviously each component has different ways of being set up. What are those components? If I click on the Components tab on the left menu, you can see all of the components that are available to you. Again, these are backed by Ignite UI, our enterprise-grade UI controls and components that really drive all kinds of applications in the market today. The nice thing is all of these components are battle-tested, designed and implemented for real-time data-intensive application. So whatever you decide you're going to design or build inside of App Builder, our components can really back up whatever performance needs that you have. If I click on the Data tab, you'll see that I have a bunch of data sources. Here I have some already added for things that I've already sort of experimented with in App Builder. I'm going to go ahead and use one of these in a little bit. We're going to use our Northwind Cloud data source and do some data binding in a minute. Then we have variables. So variables come into play on a page or a global level or through routed parameters. Let's say, for example, you have a card view of invoices and you want to click on an invoice, navigate to another page, but bring the context of that data item with you so you can hydrate components on the receiving page. That's where routed parameters come in. And then within a page, you can do variables. And then, of course, just global variables that might be available to you across every single page. So this is a centralized place to manage those variables. Theming. App Builder has a real strong theming story. So you'll see here, as I simply select a new theme, the entire application changes. I don't have to worry about knowing CSS or colors or anything. I don't really even need a designer to make all of this look good together. And let's say, for example, I like a theme, but I want to modify it ever so slightly. You can duplicate existing themes, which I've done already for some custom themes. So here you can see I've got some different looking themes with different fonts, different elevations, different colors, etc. It looks really, really beautiful. And the great thing is, from your perspective, you don't have to write any code to do this. Everything here is done through a simple WYSIWYG. You're pointing, clicking, selecting, and you're updating that theme. So you can brand your experiences that you build with App Builder with no knowledge of CSS, with no special knowledge of what colors go together. You will be guided by the tooling in App Builder, which will give you those complementary colors. And at the end of the day, you can really build out something that looks pretty beautiful and pretty stunning. So maybe we'll just leave it at this headings theme with Lato. It's a nice blue experience. And if we go back and select a couple other screens, you can see that they all look pretty good with this new theme. Everything flowed through very nicely. And then finally, the last item is your assets. You can upload images, icons, etc., and use those throughout the application. So this is just a centralized place for you to manage those assets. So I have my application here. What can I do with it? Well, of course, I can go and modify things, WYSIWYG, drag and drop, add more stuff. But let's go ahead and hit the run button in the upper right-hand side. So now I'm actually running this application. This is the live application as it's built, running just like you would expect. As I click the menu items of this app on the left-hand side, I'm navigating from page to page. All of the interactions are there. So we're actually letting you design and build this app and then run it right within App Builder. But the real beauty is if I switch on the code view. So here you can see the code in your language of choice that is generated based on what your design is. So in this case, I'm looking at my home screen, and this is the code that makes up my home screen. If I want to look at the CSS, this is all the CSS. Maybe I'm not doing React. Maybe I'm doing something like Blazor WebAssembly. So I can just select Blazor WebAssembly, and this is the code that is generated for this screen and that target language. The nice thing is you don't have to determine what your code target is prior to doing your design. You can go and design this entire application and then say, hey, I'm going to now generate this code in Angular, React, Blazor WebAssembly, or even web components. The choice is yours on what the target framework is. This makes it really great for you to not focus on the technology, but focus on the user experience. If I want to navigate, I can still do the same navigation, and you'll see here that the code is changing based on what I'm looking at. So let's go back to edit mode, and let's just look at what this experience is like, for example, to add a new page to our master view. So here we have some different menu items. When I select these menu items, navigation is happening using the just simple point and click. So I say navigate to, where do I want to navigate to? Dashboards off of the master view, which was this page. Well, let's add a new page. Let's add a child view. And we're going to call this customer orders. And what I want to do is create a screen that has my customers on the left and their orders on the right. So the first thing I'm going to do is pick a layout. App Builder gives you a nice way to pick preset layouts. These are very common patterns that you probably use in all of your apps. Let's do a easy side-by-side layout. And this guy, I don't need to be 50% width of the page. So I'm just going to set this to be 20%. And here I'm going to do a Control E. And what that does is it gives me a shortcut to all of the components that are in the toolbox. Just as easily, I could have went to my toolbox, searched for a component that I want to use. In this case, we can say, let's try a list component, and then I would just drag and drop right here onto the screen. So I want to do a list component here, and over here, why don't we add a grid component? So let's look for a grid. I'll select grid, and here I have my grid set up. What is this doing right now? Well, it's not doing anything, but it's bound to some fake data, the defaults that we have inside of the product. So let's go ahead and customize this a little bit with some data that I've already added. You'll remember here we had our Northwind Cloud data set. So in this case, I already have some APIs that are connected to App Builder from my web API. This is up in the cloud running in Azure. You'll see I have my customers list, and then I have my orders list, and the orders list is expecting a customer ID as a parameter. So what are we going to do here? Let's first off select our list item, and we're going to change it to be a data-bound component. So immediately you can see that we have some grayed out list items here. What do I want to bind to? I'm going to go and select that Northwind Cloud database, and I'm going to say use the customers list. So now I have available to me the customers that are in this data source. So what do I want to show? Let's bind to this data set and let's do the company name. And then for the subtitle, let's go back to the customers. Why don't we grab the contact name? So you can see that this data now is being bound to each one of these items. The image here, I don't really have an image of my customers in my database, so I can select this, and you can see I try to delete it. It says, hey, you can't delete this, but you can turn it off in the parent. So again, if I go back to my list component, I have options here on what I can turn on and what I can turn off. So let's turn off the avatar and let's turn off the actions. And I just want to list out my customers. And now when I run this, what we'll see on the left-hand side is the list of all of my customers. Now, this is not very user-friendly. The list makes my page go on forever. So let's go back to edit mode. And what I want to do is on this container, I want to tell it to automatically show the scroll bar. So I'm going to set the overflow to auto. So now when I run this and we scroll, you can see that I don't have a page that goes on forever. I just have a nice list of customers. What's the next thing that we want to do? You guessed it. I want to load this side with the orders for this customer. Let's go and select our grid. And what we want to do is change its data source back to our Northwind Cloud data source. I'm going to select customer orders. I don't have a customer selected, but you'll notice that I have a little red dot here with a button that's saying, hey, what do you actually want to load in this customer orders? It's expecting a parameter. So it wants a customer ID parameter. So if I test this out and I say Elfke, which I know is the Alfred's Futterski customer ID, I can send that. It says, hey, you actually did get some data back. Here are the Elfke orders. Hey, that's great. Let's click done, and you can see that the orders show up. But I want to do that for every click that I make on this list component. So what am I going to do? I am going to go to interactions, and instead of navigate to, I want to set a variable. What variable do I want to set? Well, I'm going to create a new variable simply called customer ID. Customer ID will be a local variable. It's going to be a string, and it's going to be updated every time I click on this customer. So let's create that guy. So what is the value of the customer ID? Well, of course, it's going to be the customer ID value in my data set. So now every time I click an item in my list, it will give me that information available to all of the other components on my page. How will I use that now? Well, let's go back to our binding here, and I don't want to hard code this. Why don't we bind it to that customer ID variable that we just set? So now I'll click done. This is ready to go. If I click the run button, and you'll see as I select items on the left-hand side or customers, the customer orders are showing up in the grid on the right. I didn't have to write any code. All the code was written for me in my language of choice. So here, Angular, Blazor, React, Web Components, etc. I can make it do whatever I want in terms of what my dev team is skilled or what we really are trying to target in terms of that platform. What do I do next? Well, let's say we've gone through this. We've worked with customers. We know that this application is sort of what we want. We can generate the code for this in our target platform. We can either download a zip file of the code or we can publish it to GitHub. I'm going to publish it to GitHub just because it's example of what you get in that lifecycle. But first, what I want to do is go back to my master view. And when a user clicks on this button, I want to change the interaction to navigate to my new customer orders page. So now when I run this, I'll click here, my navigation works, and if I click here, we will see this at runtime when we generate this code. So let's go ahead and select our target framework. Let's do React, and let's publish this over to GitHub to see what we end up with. So I'll change this to Webinar Demo 01, and we'll keep it at public, and let's create this repository. So what this is going to do is it's going to take this designed app with all of the data binding and all of the stuff that we added, custom themes, branding, etc., and it's going to publish this as a complete React application over to GitHub. So here you can see it's been published. Let's go ahead and click on it. And here, if I look, I can see that I've got all of my application here inside of GitHub, all of my pages, my master view. We can see here my customer orders. So everything looks great. What can we do? Let's go ahead and go to code. I'm going to copy webinar demo 1 git. Let's pop up Visual Studio Code. We'll do a Command Shift P. Let's do a git clone. And let's just clone this repository. And what we'll do is check out the fact that all of our source is still here. So you can see our master view with all of the pages that we added, including our customer orders with all of the necessary code and services to build that out. We can see our Northwind Cloud service going to all of our endpoints. So let's go to terminal, new terminal. Let's do an npm install. And that's wrapped up. So then let's do an npm start and we will see our application. So this fires up. You can see I have my entry point. And if we go back to App Builder and I go to my login screen, you'll notice this is what it looks like in App Builder for create account and for sign in. And this is what it looks like here. So it's pixel perfect. It is identical. This is my left-hand menu. You can see my calendar control over here. The theme came across perfectly. As I navigate to my individual pages, you'll see that my grids are showing up as you would expect. And this is the new page that we added with our list on the left-hand side. And as I select those customers, you will see that their orders are showing up on the right-hand side. So in a matter of minutes, I went from a sample app to a completely operational functioning app, full with data binding, custom theming, and really any other customization that I wanted to add, including code generation. And that's really the value of App Builder. This is an accelerator. It helps you get from 0 to 100 in minutes, maybe hours, but certainly not days or weeks like it would with manual coding all of this. So JJ, let's go back to you and the slides.